Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, has received a memorandum of demands from Health Workers Union Nehawu. The minister received the memorandum on behalf of Northwest Government's interministerial task team. Nehawu members took to the streets in Mahikeng in protest over the governance and health crisis in that province. The union is demanding improved working conditions and better salaries for medical practitioners. It's also calling for the removal of Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo.
The next target is a Department of Health. The next target is a Department of Health. This is a national action. We are going to follow province by province. I suspect that the Eastern Cape is the next target province. Comrades, this department, a department that is run by the government of the African National Congress. 8 provinces are a problem. We are not paid our money. We are not paid our assessment. We are not paid things that we are entitled to. There are those who thought we are tired. There are those who thought we cannot fight. Today they must know we have money, we have energy, we have time. We are going to slowly deal with them one by one, and one by one. The first target was Supra. The first target was Supra. We told him, when you don't listen to us, you must know that Ingos is our question.
We agree with you fully that in this government, we won't tolerate corruption. That I agree with you, comrade. We cannot debate that because there's no question that those of us, comrades, who are corrupt, whether they belong to my own party, the ANC, I'm repeating what I said during the budget speech yesterday, because the DA in Parliament was behaving as if corruption is our policy. It's not. And I was telling them, those who steal from the poor, those who steal from the sick, they must face the full might of the law.
Meanwhile, the task team led by Minister in the Presidency, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, continues its probe in the Northwest.
After the final assessment by each minister, then they will start putting plans and working on those plans to try and assist the province in their respective departments. The ministerial task team will work until we think that the critical issues have been resolved, as I said. We also decided that since we had visited the province, we must visit at least 2 municipalities this week to assess the state of affairs in the municipalities. So that's why we spent the whole morning and part of the afternoon with the municipality here. And tomorrow we're visiting a different municipality. And this will give us a dipstick assessment of where things are in the municipalities.
The memorandum basically speaks to issues of working conditions of healthcare workers, the issue of unpaid bonuses, but over and above that, mass corruption not only in the Department of Health, Department of Social Development, but also in the provincial government, the issue of corruption. With the view that the entire provincial government is corrupt to the core, but also that has been done through the issue of outsourcing, which deals with our members who are from time to time redundant because their jobs are done by private service providers.
Joining us in the studio now to unpack the situation in the Northwest is Professor Sipho Siebe, a political analyst. Also joining us in studio is Chris Balibacha, the spokesperson of the South African National Civic Organization, as well as Professor Shadrack Guto, now a constitutional expert. Welcome to the show, gentlemen, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yes, thanks.
Great. Now let's launch right into it with an answer on: do you believe that the decision making in the recent Northwest was the best constitutionally? And I'm going to phrase that. I'm going to pass that on to you, Professor Guto. Do you think that this decision to place the Northwest under administration, or put on an interministerial team on the ground, was it the best one constitutionally?
It is constitutional.
Okay, great.
Definitely, Section 100 of the Constitution and 101A does give the power and authority to the national government to intervene in provincial matters in the administration of provinces. Section 100, 1B also does that, but they are differently done because in Section 100 and 1A, the national government really moves in to take over or the national government is required to give directives to the province on what it should do. But if it doesn't, then Section 101B sets in. Then the national government can actually begin to take administration of the provincial departments involved. In this particular case, I think it has been done in a way that I believe is correct. I did give an opinion to the Limpopo provincial government a few years ago where I indicated that the national government acted irrationally. That's when the then Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, went on to try and administer the province. And when you begin to do that, you have a problem because here you are functioning as a national minister and you are functioning as a provincial MEC. And it is very difficult. This time around, I think because of the changes in government, we do have, obviously, we do have a new ministry, or rather a person occupying that office. And the person occupying the office is the Minister for Monitoring, Evaluation, not a service delivery minister. And from that point of view, I think heading the ministerial committee trying to deal with this matter is much more legitimate than before. And I think it was time to do so. If they didn't do so, the ANC was going to die in the western province. And I think I would support that, not because of the ANC, but to say, do we want proper administration at national level, provincial level, municipal level, and councils, because that is important. We have those spheres of government, not hierarchy, but spheres. And there are other provisions of the Constitution which I'll mention later on. Yeah.
No, so I did phrase that question incorrectly, and thank you so much for correcting me. Now, there's a question I need to pose to all of you gentlemen, and let me introduce our latest guest. We are joined as well by Mr. Napoleon Webster, who's from the Forum for Service Delivery in Rustenburg. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Now, let's take it a couple of steps back before getting, which you've answered beautifully. Now, first and foremost, it appears that government is responding to the community of the Northwest. This is by going to consult with the people and then coming back to report to the people. Is there any significance to this, to the way it's conducting this issue?
Well, I think when you talk about the democracy, you also talk about a government that's supposed to be responsive. We've seen mayhem in Northwest, and the national government could not sit and watch. It has an obligation, and as Professor Guto says, it's also obligated by the Constitution that when obligations that are supposed to be delivered at the provincial level are not delivered, the national executive can intervene. But as he says, that there should also be steps, and the steps are really for creating a sense of fairness. And the first one, as he put it, that where the system has not collapsed, a directive by the national executive would suffice. But where you see that there has been almost a collapse, the national executive can use the takeover, where they put the whole province under administration. And I think Professor Guto has been trying to make a distinction between those so that people can understand, so that you're not seen to be a government that is gun-ho or that gets excitable. So that is the first thing that they need to do, that you are responding, but you must also respond properly. And so I don't think there's a doubt that some departments, for instance, if you take the Department of Health, you have had workers having been on strike for a long time. So effectively, there's evidence. So what the president and the cabinet did was to say, instead of simply rushing in, they put in an interministerial task team to go and make an assessment, an initial assessment. And after doing that, it went back to cabinet. And the cabinet was satisfied that we can invoke Section 100. And where we are now, if you listen to Nkosazana, is to say, even with that having agreed, there's a need to say all those department ministers that have equivalent portfolios at the provincial level, they must look at the extent of the collapse of governance administration, in which case then it will assist them and the national executive to determine whether there must be a full takeover in certain departments. So what you see here is a government that is deliberate in making sure that there are no comebacks in terms of constitutionally, because if the national government misbehave, it can be taken to court. But at the same time, the intervention is also necessary to be seen to be responding to the people that we are listening. And you saw what the Nehawu was saying, that first it is Northwest province, but they are also saying, we're also aware that there are some departments that are dysfunctional or that are not doing the work. And they've already pointed out that they are going to go after the Department of Health, because it cannot be that the issue of consistency, at least with the workers, are saying, if you fail, it doesn't matter whether you are a national minister, whether a provincial premier, or whether you are a provincial MEC, we are going to make sure that we raise these issues. And the way the government must act, it cannot flout the rules. It must be seen to be responding in a manner that is constitutional.
Okay, great. Now let's move on to the issue of the Premier. Now there have been calls for Mr. Mahumapelo to step down. You as Sanko have welcomed this move and been calling for it. Are you satisfied with where things are now, with where Mr. Mahumapelo is now in that province?
No, thanks, man. Let me start by correcting. I'm the Sanko Gauteng provincial chairperson.
Noted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You see, the only thing that I see is happening is that we wanted Mahumapelo to have long gone. Unfortunately, the manner in which it's done is done in a way that Professor has put it very correctly, so that we don't want the comebacks. But we are definitely sure that we are really achieving this. Mahuma Bello has messed up the entire Northwest. Whatever he was doing there was not necessarily governing, he was playing mafia kind of game. All what he did, he looted. Everybody's aware of that. All what he did, he put his cronies. For an example, of the 17 municipalities are the PEC members of the ANC as mayors. Then the question is, who is playing an oversight role? You can see that they were all out to ensure that they loot and cover each other.
Okay. Mr. Mallet, I'm going to have to catch you there. Unfortunately, Mr. Mahuma Bello is not here to defend himself. So the question I'm going to pose to you now as a follow-up to that question is that you're saying that you've been wanting him gone. What steps did you follow to ensure that that happened, if any?
Remember, all along we've been taking the issue as alliance to the upper structure. That has been done. We've been reporting all the irregularities that are happening in that particular province. Now what is happening is for the government, in particular the national government, to come in. So what they have done now is exactly what we have been saying, let it happen. But what really disturbs is when this leaf that he has granted himself is still there, and it seems and it makes things difficult for the people to realize the ANC is at the right course to ensure that we get the man out of the office. But our wish is to see him out of the entire office, no longer even access of anything of the government, because that is where it's collapsing the entire, and the people who are affected, or the most affected people, are the people on the ground.
And that's where I need to bring you in, Mr. Webster. Can you talk about that? Mr. Mallet is talking about now the effects this has had on a service delivery. Now, you as the Forum for Service Delivery in Rustenburg, just give us an indication of what's the issue, how dire is the situation when it comes to service delivery in that province?
Yeah, the situation is bad, and it will be good to. It would have been good if we had more people from Northwest speaking on behalf of Northwest. What my concerns as an activist is that there's so much energy that was put by, I don't know, third force or whatsoever, to take out Supra. I think our communities must be educated. It should be natural that when we take action, the same energy that was used against Supra. You know, almost the whole country put so much energy into removing Supra. Even the private sector, we must use the same energy for private sector, not only for, because it brings a question of, like rented crowds. I was in Mafikeng, for instance. There were a lot of people who were coming from outside, like Northwest. And it made me worried that why would people from outside the province come and agitate the communities? And, it is good that perhaps Supra is going out. But again, let's be honest with our communities. Let's not create like seasons. Let it be natural. Like I'm coming from a mining surrounded town, Rustenburg. There's no black participation in mines, and it creates so much work for the municipality, because now the municipality has to create job opportunities. And while there's so much pressure for the municipality to create jobs, whereas the mining operations, whereby we can involve black companies which can create more opportunities. We've got so many companies which are coming from outside. We've got mining companies not being regulated. We've got a lot of poverty around the mining sector, but nobody is bringing that anger that was used against Supra. And that is my concern as an activist, that let us also be angry to those who are looting our minerals. Let us be angry to the private sector, not only channeling to, to the politicians. Let us be united against what the mining companies are doing or the corporations are doing.
All right, thank you, sir. Now, we saw Mr. Mahumapelo say that he's going to resign. Then backtracking on that, saying not going to resign, with the PEC meeting taking place, and following that PEC meeting, everything else unfolding. Now, with the decision that was made, the cabinet is seemingly overriding the decision by the PEC in that Northwest. Is there a conflict with this constitutionally?
Well, constitutionally, I think that there's a problem here. Supra is really not thinking clearly. For him to be able to say, stepping aside, which means there will be somebody acting while I'm still in office. You know how much that costs the people on the ground? It's a lot. And therefore he has to go and not simply say, I'm stepping aside on a leave of absence and somebody I choose will act, because that person will be acting, basically taking orders from him. So that is wrong and should not be allowed. And I think the interministerial committee investigating this and dealing with it ought to say, no, we cannot allow that. Secondly, I think that we are dealing here with the situation of what my brother to the left has indicated as an activist, that there's some kind of third force. I don't believe on this third force, discussion. It is brought in to confuse people that, no, we are fine. There's a third force somewhere. This third force is from inside or from outside, and so on. And it is a kind of dialogue we have to remove out of our discussion so that we get to the bottom of where there are problems. I think excuses about third force and so on do not sell, at least in my view. I don't really think it sells at all.
I see you nodding, Mr. Siepe, so clearly you agree with this. What's your take on this?
Yeah, actually, going back to what I said as a way of resolution of third force or no third force, and to also argue that the approach that government has actually done is ultimately to remove those concerns that the people are raising. What Mr. Webster was also saying is when we deal with issues, we must also be seen to be consistent, because you cannot deal with the people that you do not like in a manner that is correct and then ignore. This is why Nehawu was saying very clearly that as far as they're concerned, they are going to deal with Northwest and Supra there, but they're also going to deal with a department that is also failing, which is health. So they are being consistent in their approach. But what the National Executive decided to say is to say we've put in an interministerial task team that is going to make its own assessment, its own diagnosis, and what the approach will be evidence-based. And as Professor Guto says that fortunately here you have a minister of dealing with monitoring. So they bring the expertise about looking at each and every allegation. And once you would deal with evidence-based, then the issue of third force or no third force falls away. But what I hear Mr. Westphal saying that let us be consistent. We must have the same energy in dealing with corruption where it rears its ugly head. It cannot be seen to be factional. And I do think that the approach that is deliberate, because some people may have wanted the results now. But when you listen to the minister, he says, no, we are going to go step by step. Yes. You have the interministerial committee that has looked at this. It reported to national executives that here's the evidence. Here is and then they invoke the Section 100. But even within that, they're saying we're going to go the next step to see and look at each and every department and look at the state of governance and administration and maladministration, and then report. And I do think that that deliberate approach is the one that will remove all concerns that says this is factional, not factional, because we do not want a national government being seen to be resolving factional politics within the ANC using brute force of government.
All right, and on that note, we take a short break, and we'll be back again after this short break to discuss this matter further with the gentlemen. Stay with us.